I am joined today by our lab manager, Hadley Wickham. Hadley, would you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Hadley. I make our packages and do our stuff.
Hadley makes our packages and does our stuff. And today, Hadley is going to be talking about the combination of data dictionaries, Claude, Parquet files, in order to help us make our data sensible to not only human beings, but also to machines. Hadley, will you give us a little rundown and then feel free to share your screen and
Yep.
jump right in?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
And we will all help Hadley
And
know whether or not it's too small. So hop in the Discord and let us know if something is too tiny to see.
okay, and I made a couple of very short notes before we get into it, just to remind me what we're talking about. And basically, I since the last data lab that I came on, I kind of realized if you're going to be using AI agents to help you do data analysis, you need to write down what you know about the data so that AI agents can be as helpful as possible. Uh, of course, in some sense, like you should always have been doing this because your human colleagues also benefit from this information, but for some reason, some unfortunate quirk of human psychology, it seems to be much more motivating to write this stuff down for non-humans than for humans. So I've been thinking about this idea of data dictionaries, certainly not a new idea, but I'm going to show you a little spec, pretty lightweight spec for data dictionaries that I've been working on in a workflow that I find like super compelling, where you have three files, a data cleaning script, a data dictionary, and your final cleaned data, and you mostly edit them using Claude Code. And I think this combination just feels really, really cool to me. And I should say plus Git, because that is super important. And I'm going to be showing you these tools today in Positron with Claude Code and with a Claude Code tool called MCP REPL, which Isabella will hopefully drop a link in the chat. So MCP REPL is an open source tool developed by my colleague Tomasz. It basically allows any AI tool to run a persistent R or Python session so it can run data analysis code for you. You can also do this using RStudio and Posit AI, Posit Assistant, or Positron and Posit AI and Posit Assistant and other tools, and get very similar results. I am just playing around with this one at the moment, so do not read anything particular into my use of tools. This is just one of my experiments, trying different tools and seeing how they feel and how they should inform the design of future tools.
Okay, really quickly, since you mentioned
Yep.
MCP, can you talk a little bit about what that is? Nor had asked in the chat.
MCP, I can't remember what it stands for. Even if I did, it's a useless acronym because it doesn't really explain what it
Yeah,
does.
it's Model
But
Context Protocol.
yeah, it's basically a way of giving AI agents access to new tools to do things, new um, I don't know, like MCP servers can kind of do anything. So in this case, we're going to be using them to run our code. So this is just kind of the general like extension or plugin system for AI coding tools, and we're using this MCP REPL, which works for R and Python. And we're
Awesome,
going to
thank you.
see that shortly. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working with this data set called elevators that my colleague Emil gave to me because he really likes it because it's a fun data set. We're going to start with a CSV file with basically no knowledge about what's going on in this file, and kind of over the course of the next hour or so, sort of build up some knowledge and write all that down and hopefully come up with a cleaner data set at the end of it. And so I'm going to kick this off by asking Claude, write me a clean.r script read elevators, let's see, CSV, and save our Parquet file. So, if you don't know what a Parquet file is, you should learn about them because they are basically like a CSV file, but basically better in every single possible way. They're smaller, they're faster. You don't have to worry about different types and different missing values. You can read them into every single programming language you can imagine. So, I've done that, and Claude is doing something. Okay, and it's come out with this clean.r script. Wow, wow, okay, it's really gone all out there. It's done a bunch of stuff that I didn't want and I didn't do 30 minutes ago when I tried this out. So I'm going to tell it, hey, ramp it back for just start with the minimum. So I want us to start just as simply as possible. Yeah, okay, that is what I'm looking for. Why has it chosen to skip that first line? I do not know. I know I'm just going to delete that. Okay. So I can run that code and now I get a Parquet file. Positron has a built-in Parquet file viewer, which makes it easier to explore. Okay, so you probably could have written this code faster by yourself than with Claude Code, especially given that it gave us a bunch of crap we didn't want. But that is life working with AI. So what we're going to do next is we're going to describe this data set in a data dictionary. And I think we'll just kind of dive into that. I'm going to tell Claude to go read this. Oops, read that. And while I show you what I just told Claude to read, which is this spec. So data dictionary, or the data dictionary format that I've come up with is just a YAML file. And we'll kind of see it very shortly. It's easier to understand with a concrete example, but it's basically going to describe all your tables, the fields inside those tables, relationships between those tables, and then any kind of domain specific terminology that you might want. So let's see, it's read it. Okay, and please make me a spec, a data dictionary using what you know as our MOC elevators. And certainly Claude knows a lot more about elevators than I do, so hopefully it'll at least guess at what some of these possibly cryptic variable names actually do. Well, okay, I think I can figure out what house number is in the street name. But what's device type, last parent's date, etc., etc. So it's going to write a little bit of R code. I guess I can press Control O and see what's happening. This is one of the downsides of using this approach rather than using Posit Assistant is it's just going to slap it all together. Uh, and it's very hard for me to see what it's doing. Okay, wow, it's really hard to read this without new lines, but it's basically looking at the variables and just tabulating them. So we'll give it a few seconds there, and if there's any questions, now would be a
We
great
do,
time while I pause
yeah,
this.
but while it's cooking, Nitobacco asked, are there any cases where the CSV format is actually a better choice than Parquet, or like are we just defaulting to Parquet is better all the time?
I think though the kind of two related downsides of Parquet files is that they are not text files. So that means you can't just open them in a text file and easily look and see what's going on. You can't easily, and that means you can't easily see them on GitHub and you can't easily look at diffs. But by and
Mm.
large, like looking at large files and this way anyway is not so great. So I think that's a relatively minor downside.
But Positron has a Parquet viewer, which makes it a lot easier.
Exactly.
We also had a question about your pipes being rendered as triangles. So I told him in the chat it's because Hadley's using a font with ligatures, but I figured I'd ask you what
Yeah.
font you use.
Uh,
Is it Fira? I feel like everyone loves Fira, but then every time I assume that, it's not. Monospace Neon.
This
Okay.
is the a font that GitHub made.
Okay.
And I guess I've selected a bunch of ligatures. I have no recollection of doing that, but past Hadley clearly set that up.
All
Okay, so
right.
here's my data dictionary. Okay, what's in it? Every elevator, escalator, dumbwaiter, and related conveyance device. One row per device. Uh, okay, what fields? DV device number. DOB device identifier. I've got some information. So I should say yes, like this. So this data set has one table called elevators. That table has a bunch of columns. Each column has a name and a type. This is a string. We've got some information about constraints. Maybe it's a primary key or it can never contain missing values, a description, and then some examples. So we include the data dictionary includes examples because that's super useful for humans and it's super duper useful for LLMs as well. Okay, and we've got device status. This is an enum or like a factor. It has these five possible values, which mean these five possible things. So I'm not going to go through all of the variables in detail, but you can kind of see like this is a great place to record what you learn about the data set. And what I'm going to do now, because I want to see how this changes over time, I'm going to just turn Git on and I'm just going to say first commit. Because I lied earlier, and we do actually have a little bit of context about this data set, that there's this readme file that comes with the original data set that points out a few things. So like zip code is frequently listed as a 9-digit zip plus 4. So what I want to do now is take that, tell Claude of there's some extra context that update the data dictionary. And again, I'm going to try and use an LLM like I do normally, which is I just kind of press my fingers on the keys in approximately the correct order and hope that the LLM just figures it out. So I'm going to try not to worry about spelling mistakes, even though I'm presenting to you, because that's not what I do when I'm working by myself. So again, we'll let that cook for a little bit if you've got any more questions.
We
Libby?
did have one question about Parquet files, and just so everybody knows, we are having a whole episode on Parquet files in June with Nick Crane, so we can deep dive then. But the question was, are there any examples of applications that output Parquet files or scientific instrumentation that outputs to Parquet?
Not that I know of. It's been a little, this Parquet files are mostly used by kind of big data engineering tools. They power like Snowflake and Databricks. You can use them with DuckDB. Less common in science, I think, and in open source data science, but these files are like really, really good. They're super duper fast. They compress really well. So I strongly advise you learning that, using them, particularly if you're doing any data cleaning. I think it's a really good idea to stave the results as Parquet.
Okay, cool. And then Saptarishi had asked, what is a good way to store data dictionaries along with data sets? And I think that the answer is probably what we're doing right now.
Exactly. So again, I think you should be putting these in a plain text format. You can use my data dictionary.yaml format. I'm reasonably confident this is a useful format, and I'm going to keep working on it and make some more tools so you can easily turn this into a beautiful website, validate your data based on the spec, all that sort of stuff, but currently just kind of learning about it and trying it out and seeing what's happening.
Okay, and we have a question from Nathan also that says, is this particular data dict.yaml format specification useful for projects with only one table of data?
Yes, and this indeed is this project only has one table of data, and I think we'll see, hopefully, as we go along, that it is useful.
I think so.
So now we're just going to take a look at the diff of the data dict.yaml and see what information it has. Okay, we've got a point in time snapshot, not a live feed. Well, that's kind of obvious. Um, so this is interesting. 7 test rows carry the literal street name dummy record and should be filtered out for analysis. So that's going to be something like let's fix that shortly. So now we've at least got all of this information from that README, and now we've encoded it in the same place. And so I'm not going to again, I'm just going to skim this. We've got some information like, okay, this variable is really inconsistent. Be careful when you're using this. All of this is like super useful information if you're going to be analyzing this data set. What else have we got down the bottom? Okay, approximate longitude, etc., etc. Okay, so I'm going to say update data dict with info from. Okay, so now what I want to do next is start like diving into this data dictionary and fixing some of those issues. So I'm going to say, okay, remove the dummy records, updating clean.r, data dict, and the Parquet file. So we're just going to now iterate, like, let's make this data cleaner. So I'm going to ask Claude to update those 3 things. It's going to update my data cleaning script. It's going to put the results in the data dictionary, and then it's going to run my R code to create an updated Parquet file. And then we'll look at that in the source code and see what it's done. So it has added a line to strip out all of the street names. And then, okay, it's updated that. I'm just going to delete this. I don't think that's that important. It's removed the 7 test rows. It's removed that later in the data dictionary as well. Okay, so now I can check that in. Remove dummy rows. And so I think like one of the things that's really nice about having these 3 files in concert is it's pretty easy for me to check that Claude's done the right thing, right? Because I'm seeing it's updated my cleaning script and it's updated the data dictionary.
Becca had a question along that line, which was, is Claude also going to decide when it's a good time to make a commit?
Actually, well, let's try that out next time because you can do
Okay.
that. I don't always do that, but yes, you can also tell it to commit. So let's go back to that address, street name, because I just noticed this white space is not normalized and may contain multiple internal spaces. So, okay, let's say normalize the white space and street.
I like the typo in normalize because it's very much what I would be doing. Claude figures it out, man.
The other thing that's nice is like I don't have to like I didn't hold down the shift key to type street underscore name.
Right.
So okay. So again, what's it done? It's updated my cleaning script. It's using gsub to remove multiple sequence of spaces with a single space, and it's trimming the white space on either end. It updates the dictionary. I don't really care. I'm just going to delete that comment because I don't think you need to record that sort of information in the data dictionary when it's recorded in your clean.r. We've done that. And now I can say commit it. And we'll see what Claude does. It's going to look at the current Git status. It's going to look at the Git log. I'm not sure why it's doing this. I'm just going to say, what did it do? Add normalized street name whitespace. Okay, sounds good.
So much trust. We have a couple of questions. Do we want to fit some in right now while it's cooking?
Yep.
Okay, so Brian had asked if somebody scrolls way up, they'll see. Brian said, is there a way that the YAML format data dictionary could be used as an input For example, recode underscore values, which is the new dplyr function.
Yes, probably not with recode values literally, but I think there's various things that you can't, that Parquet files don't store very well. One of those things in particular is labels. Statisticians and data scientists love labeled values. Parquet files have no way to kind of add additional nice long labels to short information. So I'm imagining at some point there will be an R package to accompany this file that will read in your Parquet file, read in the data dictionary, and apply the labels.
Awesome.
So what else should we do? Let's just kind of look through. Uh,
And right now, just to point out that we're working in a working tree of our datadict.yaml. It's so hard for me to say. Um, we are hoping to have an episode on working trees, hopefully in June, maybe. Isabella and I have not pinned down a date yet, but we hope to be able to give you a whole episode on working trees soon, especially because that's the way that Claude works all the time. And I have found myself lately being like, gosh, I wish I knew more about working trees since I am now working in them kind of all the time.
okay, now I'm going to make a slightly dubious decision, and I'm going to say, like, looking at the zip code, like frequently stored, I'm just going to say, like, let's just make this all 5-digit zip codes. Well, no, actually, I don't like that. Like, let's get rid of. I mean, it says treat non-5-digit values as dirty. And it also says frequently stored as a 9-digit zip. Okay, let's just tell me about the sizes of zip code. I mean, sizes are a bit underspecified, so we'll see. So it's gonna like read that Parquet file into R. It's gonna like presumably do table on the number of characters, and then it's gonna tell me about that, and that's gonna kind of okay. So they are most, so 82% of them are 9 digits. So let's
Is it storing it as a number?
yeah, which
Jenna
is
and I
also
agree. They should be strings. You're not going to do any math on a zip code.
yes. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so make it a string and replace 0 and with proper missing values. So again, you're going to imagine it's going to update that clean.r. It's going to update my data dictionary, and it's going to update the Parquet file. And again, I just love this process because it makes it so clear, like what's happening in every step. And then you can go back in your Git history and see exactly what you've done. Okay, so it's changed it to a string, usually a 9-digit, 7%. I'm not going to say clean. I'm going to say 80%, 9 digits zip plus 4. And again, I don't care about that. And we've got a few nice example values. I'll look at my clean.r. Okay, converted it to character. Okay, that looks good. And now I'm going to tell it to commit it.
All right. Do we have time for some questions?
Sure, hit me.
Andreas asked, does MPC REPL work on a Windows machine? And can one use other AI LLM, for example, ChatGPT with it?
Yes, it does work on Windows and Linux. And I should say one of the things that I didn't say about MCP REPL that is really important is that it runs all of your code in a sandbox. And so inside that sandbox, it can't uh, connect to anything over the network, and it can't look at any files outside of the current working directory. So that's one of the advantages of MCP REPL is it allows you to run arbitrary R code in a way that's pretty safe. And it's using this like operating system level sandboxes. So there's no way for bad R code to get out and do naughty things. So this gives you like typically like an LLM is not just going to generate like randomly generate really malicious code, but this just gives you this nice layer of protection, ensuring that it can't do anything outside of the directory you're actively working in.
Awesome.
Okay, so and this is just so another thing I know that I've looked at in here is like stored and have we passed? I don't think we have. Actually, let's look at the Parquet file. Let's look at last, what's this? This a little wider. Well, like last insp date is currently stored as a number. That's not good.
Uh-oh.
DB last per insp date is a string. That's also not good. And DB approval date is also a string. Okay, so let's fix that. Make sure you pass all the date columns as dates. So this is like a good example where like the data dictionary is actually wrong. Like it says it's a date, but it's not actually recorded as a date in the file. Like this is typical, right? An LLM is not perfect. It's going to make mistakes. The goal is to create a process by which over time you discover those mistakes and fix them, and the whole thing gets better, and you can see exactly what's going on. So now again, we look at our git diff, like git is like such an important piece of this because I can see exactly what the LLM has done at each point. It's used a for loop. Certainly we can, well, I don't know if this is the way I would have written this code, but it's taking a very low level base R approach here. Um, but
Praise
I kind of
God.
don't really care because I didn't have to write that code.
All right. Well, while we're whatchamacalliting, really quickly, Jenna Jordan had asked, do you see a meaningful distinction between data dicts and data contracts?
That is a very good question. I had initially thought of like data dictionaries and kind of data validation or data contracts as being like very distinct. But as I have worked on this, I think they are actually this very closely related. And kind of one of my next steps is to start building out a tool so you can take a data dictionary and a compare it to a data file and discover if there are any inconsistencies. So I think that the data dictionary does actually end up specifying a lot of information that you want in a contract. And so while here I'm like focusing on the cleaning, I think you could also like have written down a data or come up with a data dictionary some other way, and now you're using it to check that the data that you get is good. So
Perfect. Okay.
let's just quickly look at this and we'll come back to that idea because one thing I think we should record, one thing we want to record on this data is for like dates and numbers. Like we should have the range here so we can
Hmm.
at a glance see what are the valid values. So let's just see what we have done. Again, looking at Git. Okay, we saw that. It's dropping that, no longer integers. So okay, getting easier to understand. Okay, and we'll just say convert dates to real dates. Again, here I'm like, I think it's faster for me. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe my commit messages aren't as good, but it's certainly faster to type that than to ask Claude to do it. So let's just go back to and just ask it. I'm going to ask it to add ranges to all numeric and date columns. And while that happens, we can do another question if you've got one queued up.
We have plenty. Darren had asked, I'm curious how Hadley views his approach to data dictionaries and the development of point blank.
Yeah, that's
My
an interesting
contract.
question. Closely, like, yeah, like as data dictionaries, as I kind of realize they do more validation, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I need to think about what this means with respect to point blank. Like, obviously, there's a lot in this data dictionary that like point blank does not concern itself with. Point blank does not help you describe what the variables mean or give you examples to look at. But if we start thinking about this as a validation framework, obviously there's going to be a lot of overlap. And I need to like think about that and think about how this is going to work because I also want to make sure this data dictionary, like as you know, as you may have seen with like various recent work at Posit, we're trying to help like all data scientists, not just data scientists who use R. How do we help data scientists who use Python? How do we help data scientists who use SQL? And so, like, if I turn this into a data validation tool, I don't want it to just work with R and Python. I want it to work if you've got a Parquet file and a data dictionary, we should be able to line them up and check them. So that maybe means like redoing a bunch of the work in point blank. Maybe it means reusing point blank in some way. I don't yet know the answer to that, but good
That's what
question.
I was thinking, like maybe pointing point blank towards the data dict.yaml and saying like, hey, you use this as your source of truth. I don't know enough about point blank for that to make sense, but that's all right. All right, fantastic questions from everybody. And if we could do one more while we're sort of in this data
Yep.
dict area. Colin had asked, data dict.yaml looks a lot like a JSON schema. So can a data dict be converted to a JSON schema for validation and ability to leverage that tool suite? Very much in the same zone.
Yeah, I mean that would be one way to approach validating it. Again, I think I would rather do something custom that works directly with this YAML. There are various ways of doing YAML specifications. And the reason I chose YAML here rather than JSON is that this is something that I imagine humans are going to be editing as well. And this is much easier. YAML is much easier to edit compared to JSON
Yes.
files.
So, so much easier. All right, let's keep going. We are 34 minutes in, so we have plenty of time.
Okay, so we've recorded a few ranges now. I think this is kind of useful. Record language and data dictionary. And this brings up, uh, keep, keep committing and then my diff goes away. Placeholder. Okay, we've got a bunch of different placeholders in different columns. So let's eliminate all the placeholder values and use proper missing values instead. So very, very common exercise when you are converting data collected by non-data scientists who don't really have this idea of a missing value. They often use placeholder or sentinel values. Like let's fix that and use proper missing values. So if we do counts or means, we get the correct thing without having to constantly remember, oh, in column 7 a missing value is actually recorded as a zero. So make sure you remove all the zeros before you compute a mean. So again, that data, see that data dictionary kind of updating. Let's see what it's done. Look, so listen to this. This is beautiful. We've got at least three different. Oh, okay. We've got 0, 10,000, star, star, dash, 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 zero, all used to represent missing values in various places. Uh,
I feel like that's a really excellent use of Claude. Is like, tell me what all these disparate missing values are in all these different variables.
Yeah, and fix it for me.
Yeah,
Like yes.
that's,
And
I
it,
remember that's one of the hardest things when I first started in data was like I'd read my own data file in and I couldn't get anywhere because of all of the different and completely unique missing values that were used for all these different things.
and this just makes it so fast. Like you don't need to have all of the code to do this at the top of your head. Like Claude can generate it, and then you can, still super, super important that you're reading this code. because like you want to check that it's doing the right thing, but
Right.
much, much faster because you have to type all of that out by hand.
Those ligature left assignment arrows are so are so cute. Okay, we have time for one more question from Nathan, and it says, so in this case, the Parquet file is checked into Git. Is that
Yeah.
more advisable when working with LLMs? Like normally I've heard to avoid checking data into Git.
It's really more about the size of the data, I think. Like if you can commit the data into Git, it just makes the rest of your life like so much easier because that data is now versioned along with all of your code. Um,
And this data happens to be public, non-private,
exactly,
non-sensitive too. So that's an
exactly.
aspect of this.
Right. So I think like that, if you can, like, I think my advice is if you can commit it to Git, you should commit it to Git because it's going to make everything it's going to make it easier to see the like how the data has changed over time. You can roll back to previous versions, all of those really nice features of using Git. Lots of cases where you can't use Git, you can't put the data into Git. It's too big, it's confidential, lots of reasons. This workflow still works there. You'll still have that clean.csv, you'll still have that data dictionary, you just won't have the Parquet file checked in.
Awesome. Okay. We have some comments in the chat too from people talking about their considerations for checking data into Git. So thank you everybody who's adding your expertise here. Connor had also asked a great question, which is, can you show off a diff of a Parquet file and what that looks like?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
So this is the one of those downsides of Parquet files I mentioned earlier. You can't easily diff them. Um, I guess I've never clicked this before, but let's
You hit the open anyway button. Hmm.
yeah. Uh, okay, yeah, oops.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's not going to be useful.
Definitely not.
That
Not visually.
feels like something that is something that we could fix, or the positron team could fix. Like maybe I should at least drop a message in our Slack channel and be like, hey, have we thought about this? It would be pretty slick. Okay. Do you want to
We
do more
have
questions or you want to?
no, I think that we are good on questions. I think that that was the last one for right now. Somebody can remind me in the chat if I have somehow skipped over your question. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so this is interesting. We've got a classic weird scroll problem. Okay. I just asked it what could I do. I don't really like this. Convert this numeric. We could fix the obviously wrong geocodes. Some of them are in Pennsylvania. Uh, this is kind of interesting. Like this is a thing where I'd be like, okay, yeah, like yes, we could use a latitude and longitude bounding box to zoom in on New York City. I would have zero clue what those are. I would have relatively little. I don't know whether you should trust this or not, but we could look at that. Uh, Actually, let's do that one. Like let's look at the non-NYC zip codes. Start by writing the map.r. And I'm just gonna do that. Like I want it to, what I'm hoping it will do is create a plot of all of the latitudes and longitudes just because I've given it enough context to say that I want a map in the file name, and we'll see what that does. Okay, it's doing some, oh, interesting. So it's decided to look at New York City zip code prefixes. That's interesting. And then it's going to, so it's actually sort of interesting. like it has actually run that code and looked at the plot, but we can't see the plot. So I'm just going to source this in Studio and then Positron, sorry, and look at that. And that is like pretty obvious that something is wrong with those. Like there's some ones that are way outside. So yeah, drop the points that are obviously out of range. Again, if you're doing this for a real analysis, you'd want to be thinking a little bit more. Okay, and it's updated my map.r, which is fine. Let's just rerun that. Okay, that looks more like New York City, I think, at least for my not terribly amazing knowledge of New York City. It's now I want it to like no, let's update and
Just so you know, if you're not looking in the chat, Hadley, we currently have a vote going on how much this vibe session is going to cost, but we have no idea if you're going to be able to tell us at the end what the token
okay,
cost is.
ask. Let's see.
All right, slash cost for everybody who is paying attention to what Hadley is typing into Claude here. And it looks like while we are seasoning on that slash cost, we do have a question that I think I missed. Andreas brought it to light for me. Let's see. The question was, oh, I just scrolled away from it. Andreas, thank you for helping me get there. Jeff said, I'm curious to know how much this hour of using Claude Code will cost. Can we get it updated at the end? Oh, the same question that we were just on. Okay, great.
Yeah,
We'll
we're
get back.
good.
Yes, we did it.
Well, that's dumb. I cannot tell you that because I'm using my Claude Code subscription.
Aha. Well, David had also asked an easier one. Which model is Hadley using? Slash model
The recommended to Opus 4.7
with its 1 million
for the
context window.
defaults. And I will say, like, I'm trying to think how to put this. Like, I guess I don't care about money. Like I get like whatever. Like if it saves me a minute or two and it costs me like $5, like I don't care. I am not a cost-conscious consumer of LLMs, and I 100% accept that it's coming from a place of privilege. But I do think for like what we're doing here, I suspect like that there are cheaper models that would do almost as well and substantially bring the cost down. But that I don't care about that because I have little money, I have little time and a lot of money, so I optimize for that.
We will forgive you.
So
Okay,
let's just oops, close that plot down, just see what we've done.
I think we all want Hadley to use whatever he has to use to develop all of the cool things that we get to use. Slightly different use case. Russ says thumbs up. Um, and then Connor had asked a question in the chat that I didn't understand. What CRS is it using to determine what coordinates are inside New York? Connor, what is
Coordinate
CRS?
reference system.
Coordinate reference
I don't
system.
know. I don't care, but I trust that plot. So again, if you're doing a real analysis, you would want to figure that out. But I'm guessing that Claude has enough knowledge to know the location of New York City, and based on what I saw on that map, it looked pretty good. I will show you one other thing I saw that because it's kind of related. When you update map.r to add a map of elevators around Central Park. Because this was kind of interesting, and I spent a little bit of time looking at this previously. And again, this is something that like this would be so tedious to do by hand, and I will see how well Claude actually does here. But like it probably knows the approximate latitude and longitude of Central Park, and it can figure that out and update this code. And
I'm
okay.
definitely showing my lack of knowledge for spatial analysis here. So thank you for everybody who's adding context about CRS in the chat.
I have no idea why I decided to put a dark green rectangle there. That seems pretty pointless. But this, yeah, I did this earlier, and this is kind of interesting, right? Like, so what's this elevator like right in the middle of Central Park? So let's ask, can you pull out the rows for the elevators that are inside? Let's see, you can park. Oh yeah, the bounding box is clearly totally wrong because it's square, so Claude just messed that up. Um, Elevators inside the buildings, inside the park. The Met, the Delacorte, the boathouse, the tavern on the green. Like I'm skeptical about this. I'm pretty sure that's the Met there. That's a Metropolitan Museum of Art. That I'm sure that has elevators, but this one like right in the middle. Oh, and now we've gone into
Uh-oh, what is that?
cool gibberish mode. We are summoning the ancients now.
Connor, thank you in the chat for giving us some more context. CRS is how we know how to plot coordinates on the Earth, adjusting for the fact that the Earth is not flat. Okay, we had a question, which I will scroll up to from Nelly, that says, is there a way to quantify environmental and electrical costs? Like not ones that affect one's personal finances, but still have an effect on the world? That is a very hard question, I think.
Yes. Yes, that is yeah, I think it is important to be worried about the environmental aspects of LLMs. I Yeah, like for me, like for my usage of LLMs personally, I am reasonably certain that they are a pretty small proportion of my overall impact on the environment. And so what that means is like if I want to do good for the environment, then the place to start is not to decrease my LLM usage. It's to like fly less. Or, we have electric cars and a solar powered roof. So those are the things like I really believe in climate change and we should all be doing things to try and make the environment better individually. Um, and so if you want to do that, I think the way to do that is not to decrease your LLM usage, but to look for other things. But then at like obviously a societal level, like individually, it might not be a big use, but um,
Right.
across millions of people, it adds up to be a big impact. And now I'm like out here like writing tools to make LLMs easier to use. Like, how do I kind of square that with caring about the environment?
I think that
I
Nelly
Yeah.
has a good point, which I think about a lot. Nelly says there's certainly a difference between people making AI slop videos en masse and people making code to do research. Um, and I think about that a lot with like the number of extremely wealthy people who are flying private jets places that they don't really need to be flying private jets places, kind of back and forth all over the place. And if it helps, I am offsetting all of our carbon footprints by never leaving my house. Okay, we have cooked, and I think that Claude has completed something, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think. Oh, it says no elevators are generally located inside Central Park.
That's what Nor was asking. Is this supposed to be Central Park? Yes, I
Yes.
think so.
But so it's fair, I think. Yeah, I mean, this is now, I'm like, how could I specify that that is that one point I really care about? And I don't.
Because Central Park is definitely a big rectangle on the map.
Yes.
We know
And
that. And we do
skimming
know that,
this, it is not located this point. Um, I mean, ugh. Like this is the type of case where you just want to be like, let me select that point. Um, and I don't know how to do that. So we will just okay, actually maybe what if I just did give
yeah, Jared
me
saying, we need ggplotly.
yeah, five closest elevators to the centroid.
Colin says, can we remake the map with an interactive library?
We could. I'm not gonna, this is a bit of a well, we'll see how far. I
Are
guess we
we
don't.
diverging from our main
We're
task
diverging a
here?
little bit from data dictionaries, but okay, so interesting. So now we could pull out this device, but that's the Met, though. I don't know. That's a mystery. That is like a mystery that we should it is also, it's possible that this is like, again, these are escalators and dumbwaiters, so maybe there's a restaurant there with a, I
Oh,
mean, like,
Jared says if the coordinates are 40.7 by -73.9, it could be the NYPD Central Park precinct.
interesting.
And looking at it on the just eyeballing the coordinates, that could be it.
Let's just try one more thing. Let's see if I can get on a leaflet map. I'm basically worried about doing any of these interactive things because there's like maybe thousands of points there, and maybe they'll.
We have a few people who are native NYC folks in the chat that are helping us out a little bit here.
Okay, this is where it's geocoded it to, and it is a freight elevator, and the address is 1005th Avenue. So I think that is a geocoding mistake. I do not believe there is an elevator in the Great Lawn or somewhere near it. I guess it could be the New York Central Park precinct, but given that the address, let's just pull this out. And now we could, now let's just do,
Yeah, Dan says that point is in the middle of the Great Lawn or a reservoir.
what's this? See, now this is the downside of using an AI for everything. I don't even know what the name of that variable is. So let's go to my data dictionary. Let's look at you.
So many elevator conspiracies in the chat now.
What? Oh, okay. There we go. Oh, I don't know
Did we
people
just have to tell it
are.
which filter to use?
I should have loaded
Okay.
it. So we can see, yeah, 1000th Avenue. It's a freight elevator. I don't know if there's anything else there that really tells us anything, but I'm just going to say that is a bad geocoding. Although that does make me see there's this a weird dot 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 27. Okay, let's just say right. So clearly there's a col it's interesting, there's a column in the data frame that's not in the data dictionary. Um, and again, this is where you really want like a tool to be double checking them so that the LLM is less likely to make mistakes because you've got that as the data and the data dictionary all aligned. Um, like it was never like
It was never
your
documented.
yeah.
This is where we have to jump in with our last question that is unanswered, which is Marco's asking, how do you know this is actually faster or more productive than just writing the code? Like the back and forth seems like it's a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And or is it faster or does it take the same amount of time, but it's just different work?
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know. I kind of feel like I could have probably written this code fairly quickly. This is legit. This is legitimate time saving. Like I would have had to go and do some research to find that out. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think if I was less familiar with R code, this would have taken me longer to write. But as long as you can kind of read R code and interpret it, and you can be fairly I think you don't need a particularly sophisticated understanding of R code to be able to read this and verify that it's doing what you wanted. So I think on the whole, like this is much faster. It's also been much slower because I'm explaining everything I'm doing to you all and answering questions.
That's true.
I do think it's faster. I don't think it's like 10 times faster. It's not faster for everything, but you also don't you don't have to use it when it's slower. Like you can still do all of this by hand. I think it's still a useful workflow. But that whole idea of keeping these three files in sync, I think is really powerful and really useful. And if you have more feedback about this, I'd love to hear about it because this is something that I am going to be working on more in over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah. Well, I will say, Rachel and I have been talking about having a data science hangout all about these like existential AI questions um, with some posit AI brains. And so look forward to that. I think in the future be a great space to have these kind of conversations and talk about this stuff out loud. And then also as an update, Dan Chen put a link in the chat to a Gizmodo article about an artificial cave beneath Central Park, and that maybe that is a maintenance elevator. The conspiracy continues because inside the article, elevator is mentioned 3 times. Like there is definitely somebody riding an elevator beneath Central Park.
I guess the other thing we could do actually is if we go back to that code
See, you thought
and
you were coming to learn about data dictionaries, but actually, we have 1 minute left till the top of the hour, and we are solving a conspiracy theory about the elevator in the middle of Central Park.
yeah, this is the official elevator data where this came from. Yeah, like no real information. I'm assuming 1005th Avenue is
The Met.
the Met.
All right. Well, I have to end us. I have to stop us from what we're doing, and we have to move on. But I really, really hope that today was useful for everybody, that you learned a lot about this sort of collaborative work process that I think for Hadley is still like a work in process a little bit of refining. And we would love to hear the ways that you are doing all of this stuff and the way that you're implementing,
That is not the Met. That's the New Zealand Museum of Natural History. So there we go.
which is probably where my cousin is right now. She's a volunteer at the American Museum of Natural History, waving to my cousin. All right, everybody, this was fantastic. I had a great time. I hope that you did too. We got every single question answered. All right, everybody, say
Bye, everyone.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks.